Welcome, everybody. It's a beautiful day. Welcome to Land Preservation. We're calling our meeting to order at about 3 minutes after 4.
Chris, in the waiting room.
And Julie, can you call the roll?
I can. Daryl Burkhart,
Here.
Janine LaPrade here. Tim Redmond.
Here.
Liz Wiseman.
Here.
Barry Lonick. Chris Chen.
Here.
Chang, excuse me. And Lisa Pappas is on her way.
On her way, and David Reed will not be here today. Okay, thank you. Have you all had a chance to look over the agenda? Any additions, any changes that you want to make? And if so, tell me what they are. If not, let's have a motion and support to approve the agenda.
Support and approve.
Tim and Deirdre. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No, okay, the agenda is approved. All right, moving on to the minutes. Lisa did those last month. Thank you, Lisa, in absentia. Any changes or corrections to the minutes from last month? If not, yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, if not, if there is a motion to approve, I'll move to approve. And
Second.
Second for Tim. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you all. All right, let's go on to public comments. Anyone, Kathleen, any comments? No? Anyone online, Chris, that would like to comment?
Yeah, we have Pam Boyd.
Great. Hi, Pam.
Good afternoon. I'm here just for public comments because my 22-month-old boss keeps me hopping. How do I put this? So I don't know if you're planning or not planning on buying the Lutton property. I think there's some things that you should be aware of. And I'm not saying some of them are necessarily bad or good. So I hope you all know that, and you've been out to the western Lutton property west of Baker, and you've seen all the trees that have been taken down. I haven't seen it. My son-in-law and daughter live at 1950 Baker Road, which is just north of Many Hands and just across the street from the Lutton property. And I was told that you could drive some cars through the tunnel that has been made in the woods. The other thing you should be aware of, this spring, we understood why there are commercial grade sewer system running through their yard from the east side or the back side of the property to Baker Road, which actually goes under Baker Road and empties into the West Lutton property. And that is because a river of water, when the ground was frozen in the field behind my daughter's house, did not absorb water, and they literally had a river running through their yard front to back and into the Lutton property. And as I understand it, the preserve there was also flooded. And I believe that a lot of that water came from that event. And my husband took video of it, and it's significant. And the kids were really, really lucky not to get flooded out. So there's some things that you need to be aware of, and we're not quite sure what to do yet. But there you go. Thank you.
Pam, can I ask you to clarify one thing? When you say commercial sewer, is that something you know, or is that something that's a question mark?
No, I know there are there are grates like you would see in a city, and there is I'm sorry, my husband has my boss, my 22-year-old boss at the moment, but it's probably a 6-foot round underground pipe that runs from their backyard, not all the way to Lutton's property in the back, but all the way from their backyard, and there are open grates. So if you think of a pie crust that only has one side lath, it's not crisscross, you can see, I think they have at least 3, if not 4 of these these grates. So you can clean out if these big sewers get clogged with debris, and it goes under Baker Road. And so when Baker Road was redone by Washtenaw County Road Commission a couple years ago, they didn't disturb it. You can see on the west side of Baker Road where the sewer pipe comes out to remove that water. And
Okay, yeah, I don't want to take too much time on it right here, but it sounds as if you have, you know, a fair amount of supporting, pictures and
Yes.
documentation, right? Okay, okay,
Yes.
good deal. That is good to know. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Have a good day.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else, Chris?
No other hands are raised.
Okay. Let's go on from public comment. We are going on to reports. We don't have really, I didn't include any reports. I will say that the Board of Trustees, I'm gonna give the board a shout out. They very promptly approved the appraisals of 2 properties that we recommended last month, so that we could get those appraisals underway. And I'm very appreciative that the board acted so quickly and so that we could move those forward. As far as planning, I don't have a report on planning. Parks hasn't met. They will meet next week. So I will have that for our next meeting. And ESDF, I don't have a report on ESDF. Didn't get any reports.
Environmental,
Yeah.
because Jan's name.
Yeah, and she just didn't respond. So I sent her a reminder and I don't have anything for that. Sorry?
I can give a verbal report.
Okay,
It really, nothing that impacts, you guys were working on, changes to ordinances.
okay.
So there's not a lot of development coming forward.
No, thank you. That's great. We're sort of trying to, as you know, focus on things that affect what we do, but thank you.
Liz, Jan Culbertson's been out of,
Okay, has she?
what do you say, commission? She's been attending to some family matters.
Oh, that's fine.
Yeah, so.
That's fine. We
She wasn't at the last. I was surprisingly at the last Environmental Sustainability Task Force meeting, because I have missed several, but I was there, Tim was there, and someone else, supported or hosted the meeting because Jan's.
Okay. I always figure that people have things going on.
Yeah.
When things come up.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
happens to me too, so.
Yeah.
The only thing to perhaps bring up and remind people of is the sustainability fair, which again will be, I don't have the date,
October.
October.
6th.
Yeah, in the Meyer parking lot, we'd like to double the attendance of it and thinking about, I don't know, doing various things. I just want to call it to your attention because
Put the date on your calendar. We'll talk about that more as it gets closer to.
October 6th?
Mhm.
Okay.
Old business, and financial statements. We have the financial statements here and we also have Ryan here. So why don't, Daryl, do you want to start out and just tell us anything?
Well, just very briefly on the current month's financial statements, there's nothing significant in there. This is not final because of course year end they have an audit and there may be some adjusting journal entries. But we'll get a copy of the final when the time comes. Other than that, we're ready for
And
it.
then Brian, we just invite you to, yeah,
I'll sit here because I'm just pulling up. I have your
financial statement, your balance sheet up in front of me through our computer system, DSNA. I met with Daryl here, it was about what, 2 or 3 weeks ago now. We met for about 30-45 minutes and discussed how the Open Space Land Preservation Fund, as well as some other funds in Scio Township, have been managed or invested in the past. The vast majority of your fund, at least for the financial statement ending March 31st, 2025, approximately 3.2 million rather, was between our checking and pooled savings account that's held at Bank of Ann Arbor. That account previously to about a month ago was earning between 1.4 and 1.7%. I had a meeting with a couple of our representatives from Bank of Ann Arbor. They have worked with us to improve our investment return, our liquid money, so money that is in our checking and pooled savings account now earns 3.7%. That was a small update from 3.75 was the original amount, 3.7 ended up being. The rate was
On what amount is that? The
$3.2 million.
2.2 million, so that's an extra $60,000 a year. So that equates
I
to
did the math real quick.
an extra 2%
For long-term.
is what you're saying.
I'm sorry, what was the change to the?
Right.
From the change on the interest rate
Yeah.
goes from between 1.4 and 1.7, checking and savings at different interest rates. Sure. Savings was a little higher, of course, to 3.7%, regardless of whether it's in
Okay.
checking or savings.
Thank you.
That's delta 2%.
Yeah, at 3 million, that's about 60,000 plus.
Yeah, about $64,000 a year,
60,000.
roughly. And that number will go up over time, certainly as more tax revenue comes in. Your collection is on the December bill, so there won't be any this summer. But depending on what activity you have for the remainder of the summer and into the fall, there still should be some appreciable interest posted to your account. Daryl and I also spoke about, there's 2 other products that, one that the bank offers that's still insured. And another product that is offered by an organization called Michigan Class. Michigan Class is a governmental investment pool. They invest into commercial paper. It's all highly rated by all insurance agencies. It's held by banks, everyone from Chase Bank to banks across the globe. They hold at one time 16 billion or more in deposits from anyone such as Scio Township to the city of Detroit, Washtenaw County, Wayne County, Grand Rapids, school districts, municipalities, both large and small across the state. There is a little bit higher of a return on that account. It is not insured, but they have not lost a dollar since their inception in the early 1990s, and they've had hundreds of billions of dollars in deposits over that time. That deposit rate right now is averaging about 4.38%.
But that's an investment account, which means the value, the principal value will go up and down with the market, correct? So that, while they may not have had losses from a failure, they have had probably ups and downs due to market changes.
Yes,
correct?
as the interest rate environment changes with the economy. Right now, it's at 4.38%. Certainly, if the economy has a downturn, as it does from time to time, just uncertain when, the interest rate return would be lower. It's likely the case. I did speak with Bank of Ann Arbor. They have assured me that if we had a 1/4 point reduction in the federal interest rate, that our rate would remain the same. Certainly, if the federal government made additional changes beyond that, we would have to review where our interest rate would be at that point, just based on the market conditions.
Brian, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
Was it, my name's Lisa.
Yeah.
Was it a different product through Bank of Ann Arbor that allowed the interest rate to go up to 3.7? Was it just like for long-term clients, kind of a relationship?
It was a relationship review.
Yeah.
That was a lot of it, as well as, realizing that as a community-minded bank, they want to support organizations in the community, especially an organization that at times has not only the LPC fund, but we have our general fund. We have other deposits with Bank of Ann Arbor. At some periods throughout the year, we have upwards of $60 or $70 million in our Bank of Ann Arbor accounts.
Okay.
To your point though, and actually, what I may, should have touched on first, but I went to the other product. Bank of Ann Arbor also has another option, which is something that we're participating in with everything in the pooled savings account. It's called an insured cash sweep. What happens is, every night after the bank settles all the credits and debits with the accounts, any of the funds that are over our beginning daily balance sweep out to banks across the country. They match our deposits 1-for-1. That product earns above the 3.7%. That rate fluctuates depending on economic conditions. I'll have a better rate to report to you once I have the statement for May here in early June. But those funds earn, I would say probably half a percent to 1/4% better than the 3.7. So that's something we automatically participate with. Bank of Ann Arbor, they put under $250,000 in each of these other participating banks. That bank matches our deposit back to Bank of Ann Arbor, so Bank of Ann Arbor can lend in our community and put that money to work locally. So that money never, it leaves as an accounting practice, but this has been a product that's been around for about 25-30 years as well. And it's something where it allows us to have a greater amount of our assets insured.
Thank you so much for getting us on your relationship account. That's well worth it.
Yeah, I'm glad to see, obviously, benefits, land preservation. I'm just happy to see it benefits everyone here at the township as well,
Yeah.
because, we can do more work for everyone.
Bank of Ann Arbor is in pretty good shape, right?
Yes.
Has
They had,
its-
they had one of their best years ever last year. They had approximately $50 million in net interest income. They have $1.6 billion in deposits. They've purchased and conglomerated into some other local banks over the last several years. First National Bank out of Howell, they purchased. And they're looking at what they can do more in the community to certainly enhance their size and their market.
And Ryan, are those funds, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
are they accessible
Yes.
immediately? They're,
So any of these programs I've talked about, if you voted on something today and recommended to the Board of Trustees and it was placed on an upcoming agenda, within 24 business hour notice, I can have any of these funds available back in the township's checking account for checks to be issued.
So, this pooled savings
Mhm.
is the one that has the insured cash sweep.
Mhm.
So basically, the funds are spread out among multiple banks, no more than 250 at any one bank, so they're all FDIC insured.
Yes.
What about the checking account?
Checking account is only transferred into when we have transactions to conduct. So for example, each time the Board of Trustees goes to approve a claims for payment and a check run, on Tuesday night, when we do that at our meeting, if that includes an LPC check for a purchase of a property, we would do a transfer the next business day, so Wednesday, and transfer 400,000, 300,000, 1.6 million, whatever the amount is, out of our pooled savings to our pooled checking, to then issue valid checks out to the payees.
So right now, we have had for the last year, over $800,000 just sitting in checking.
I'm gonna look into that. I don't know why.
Yeah, but it, now with this new rate, I mean, it would earn the same interest rate as the pooled savings, but it's not insured. And it's over the 250 FDIC insured level.
Correct. I agree with that. I need to dig into this a little bit more because I check our accounts every day to monitor for not only fraud, but also bounce payments or other situations that might come up. I know for a fact the last week that the pool checking account in general has not been over $700,000. That's why I found the fact that the LPC's financials reporting this. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying it
Weird,
It is weird, it makes,
There's something
I'm gonna
going
look into it, and I
yeah.
can dig into why that is.
Yeah,
It
because
might have
that's,
been an accounting issue, so.
it's just been sitting out there for at least over a year, so yeah.
Yeah, there's far more funds in our savings account for just the reason of not only security, but insurance, especially now that it's part of a product that offers.
Okay.
Ryan, are CDs, 6-month CDs or 12-month CDs earning more then
Not appreciably right now, right? We have a few CDs with our water and sewer fund here at the township because we have a lot of assets within it. To give you an idea, the sewer fund has probably $15 to $16 million of cash and investments. The water fund has probably about 4, maybe a little over. Those CDs are paying about 4 to 4.25 on average. So it's a very similar return, but tying up funds so they're not quite as liquid.
right, but out of this 3.2 million, we can probably, and Barry or Daryl, correct me on this, we can probably project, let's just say $1 million is gonna, we're not gonna need to draw on it for a year or something. Anyway, I'm just trying to earn as much money for us as we can. So, anyway, that's the thought, Ryan, if we can,
And the other thought, that goes along with that is if you have long-term might not be, but longer-term capital ideas and plans, it's a little bit of a hedge. It's not a sure thing. Is the interest rate gonna go up? Is the interest rate gonna go down? If you have it in a CD and you have it at a fixed rate, it's fixed
it is, yeah.
till the end of the expiration of the CD, but then you're just doing a bit of hedging against whether it's going up or going down. If it's going up, you don't get the appreciation. If it goes down, well, you're saving yourself but only for a little while. And the rates are relatively minimal differences, even at this large amount of money, that you can get appreciable rates very similarly and just have much more liquidity. But certainly, if you knew for a fact, we could look and see what we would have available from some of the banking partners and see if somebody is offering a competitive product for a longer term, if you didn't need the liquidity right away.
But then with CDs, you have to really monitor them, because if you don't close them right in a narrow 10-day period and they mature, they'll automatically roll.
Automatically
So
renewable.
it becomes a a lot higher risk to try to monitor.
We have a hotshot treasurer.
I would share, there is a savings Flagstar account that was on the balance sheet for March. That account was closed. I worked with Flagstar to close the account. Having an additional account that we need to do bank reconciliations on, even just for the interest every month, is just it's extra work. So that amount was put into the pooled savings account. That deposit was made here in the month of April. So if it's not been booked in, it should be booked in here, hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow.
So with these various options that you have described for us, you will, as treasurer, obviously we share the goal of earning as much as we can. You'll just keep evaluating, maybe consulting with Daryl and keeping her up to date.
Absolutely.
And just kind of let us know if there are interesting changes. I mean, I'm very appreciative of what you've done so far. It seems long overdue, actually. And so, thank you.
Yeah, that'd be a help. Any other questions for me, or I'll?
Did you have questions about the balance sheet, Tim?
Yeah, with the investment class account, what is that?
Yep, so that was Michigan class. That was in addition to Bank of Ann Arbor's products, which are pool checking, the pooled savings, and you'll not see the cash sweep account on these March or April statements because that account was just open. Investment class is Michigan class. That's the municipal government pool that we're able to invest into that buys commercial paper from banks across the country. Like I said, we have a lot of money, a lot's relative. We have probably $2 million of general fund in it. There's probably, off the top of my head, another couple $1 million between water and sewer. I think Parks has some money in Michigan class. Money can come in and out. Like I said, if today or tomorrow, today would be a good example. If today at 2 o'clock you had met and you made a decision, I went to the board next Tuesday, and the board approved it. That following morning, somebody just lets me know, or I see it, we would be able to execute a transfer out of Michigan class and have that money in the account the next banking morning.
Right, and Ryan, just wanna really
Yeah.
quickly look at this. We've got calendar year taxes receivable. That's
So-
the township.
Yep, so that's a current year tax receivable. The last tax distribution has been completed. We're working on one small issue with Plant Moran. There's one other receivable that was new this year. There is about $31,000 that still has to be, I have the physical check. I can't run it through the system till I figure out this other general ledger item that is holding us up. So that should be on and reflected in the May statement. Should hopefully be resolved Monday.
Okay, and there's a little list of delinquent personal property taxes, you know, blah, 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 all the way back to 2012. So shouldn't some of those be written off?
Anything 2020 and prior, we're actually going to the circuit court. We filed a petition and notified all of the relevant authorities here, not next week, but the following week. Tuesday, I believe the 20th, we have an appointment in circuit court, and those amounts are gonna be discharged. They're non-collectible. Most of the businesses either are closed, or in some cases, the amounts are extremely small, 24 cents.
Right.
Some of these businesses don't exist. And even if they do, trying to get them to pay a bill that's 13 years old, it's not.
Okay, and the last two are due from the county, the delinquent taxes from the county.
So real property, so your home that you own or a commercial property such as like Meyer or, Grand Traverse Pie Company, for example, if they do not pay their property taxes by February the 28th.
Okay.
After that, the taxes go to the county. Any taxes that the county collects on a routine basis, they could give back to the township, the land preservation tax, our operating tax. Those amounts come back to us. We would write down that due from county, and that would end up in your pooled savings.
So we will get that.
Most of it you will. There could be some that's uncollectible, people that are either passed away or their property goes to foreclosure because they just don't pay any attention. It's rare, but I would say you get the vast majority of that money.
Now, Ryan and I had a conversation on this particular account. This balance has not changed since last June, which is kind of odd, and Ryan was going to look into that and see why.
I
because-
believe as part of the year-end cleanup, they're gonna be going through and writing in the new receivable. The amount may be, I think the amount might be a little bit more this year. We had probably 90 extra parcels that went to the delinquent roll than we did in previous years. I think some of that was due to the post office's continued struggles with the mail. I think there's been mail for Barry that's came back here 2 or 3 months later, which, yeah. So that's a struggle.
But you would expect that account to go up and down, up after tax season and then down slowly as things. are
Correct,
collected. It's
yes.
just, this has been static, so I know they're gonna be looking into cleaning that stuff up.
We also have a finance director that job description that's for approval on Tuesday night, not directly related to LPC, but having additional capacity should help all departments, including the LPC.
Great.
Last item on there, due from the state.
So-
Where is that?
That amount Daryl and I both looked at as well. I'm waiting for an answer from our Plant Moran team on that.
Well, what I was told last fall from Ali is that that's a memo account. When we were awarded $200,000 grant award for the Hicks property from the state, they didn't want it to just kind of get lost in the paperwork, so they made that an entry into that account for that 200,000, and you'll see there's a deferred revenue for another $200,000. They offset each other. It's just those little amounts, the 4,700 and the 7,400, those are probably cleanup items. They should not be in there, but the big dollar amount is the state grant award in an offset entry.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like it was from MD Brad, Michigan Department of Agriculture.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah,
That's
I figured that's what it was, but I'm like, there is some other small entries in there. I can't really see what the detail is before early 2023, at least for my access. My guess is that there's just some cleanup to be done. I don't think, maybe there's a little bit of revenue, or maybe there isn't, it might just be an accounting entry that has to be made. I
Thank you.
defer to our finance people on that one.
But that state money hasn't come into our account yet.
Not until we close.
And
Well,
very-
And it will, it probably won't come into our account, will it? It goes directly to.
Title company.
I'm not sure. In the past, the state has, I believe, actually sent a check
Oh,
to the township
oh, okay.
in advance. And then the township couples that with its share of the purchase price
Right,
and wires. that.
total check or wires, yeah, that makes sense.
But again, basically, these two particular entries, if you think of the double-sided entry for accounting,
Yeah.
receivable deferred,
that-
and when the closing occurs, there'll be an entry that just offsets them,
Right.
eliminates them.
But when it comes in, that one of those savings accounts checking, are gonna go up $200,000.
And then out again. I mean, it's
Yeah.
in and out.
Right away.
Yeah, it would probably go out, it would probably come in maybe on Monday, and then if you're ready to close, you would close on Wednesday or Thursday. That would be my guess. It would probably, unless it happens like at the end of a month, you probably would never see it unless you looked into the detail of those accounts.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I'm happy to
Stay
answer any
late.
questions you guys have. Feel free to give me a call or stop by the township.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah,
We might invite you back again.
I'd love to
thanks.
do it.
Down the road.
Well, I'm gonna take off. You all have a wonderful meeting, all right?
Thank you, Ryan.
Good night.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thank you.
Let's go on to,
Liz,
yes,
if I may interrupt, I don't know if Jen Culbertson is, she did join and she came on screen briefly, but I think we
Oh.
got right into, so Jen, I don't know if you had something that you wanted to say for planning?
or environmental.
Oh, thanks. I just wanted to say that we'll be sending out email invites to all of you, if you haven't received it already, that the Jackson Road Corridor public meeting is going to be at the end of the month. So I will send you all out an invite, and I hope you will participate. It will be a hybrid meeting, so you have a choice of being in Township Hall or online. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan.
Thanks, Jen.
Could I confirm the date for the sustainability fair? You said the 6th?
Is the 5th, Sunday the 5th, I believe.
That's what I thought, because the Sunday is the 5th. Okay, thank you for confirming.
Thank you for
Let's go on to our open seat, an update on our open seat. This is what I know. Lisa wrote the excellent article that was in the last newsletter. So everyone has seen that. Thank you for doing it too. I know you put in some time on that. As of last week, we had one applicant who had submitted a partial application. And David Reed got in touch with her. And then she subsequently, I understand, submitted a letter of interest in supporting documentation. So we have one applicant. In addition, Mary Gillis put a banner on the township website, which I haven't seen, but y'all may have seen. I hope lots of people have seen it. And put a notice in Nextdoor and on Facebook. So we're trying to spread the word, keep your ears open and your thinking caps on. So we can fill this seat.
Barry, do you have anybody in mind to fill that?
I've jotted down a couple of names. And then I also contacted the Huron River Watershed Council, which has a little program that they call Change Makers, if I remember correctly. Where people have contacted them and expressed interest in getting involved in any kind of things. They might be running for township board or serving on a committee. And so I said, we've got an opening in Scio. Please distribute that to your network. So we'll see if anything comes of that.
Great, thank you.
But I'm starting to, I mean, there's 18,000 people in Scio Township. There's
I know, right?
lots of, bright people that would be perfect for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like we'd like to have 2 or 3 people to.
Yeah, yeah.
apply.
I'm hoping to get several applications and then the board can look them over.
Yeah, good.
Okay. Federal funding, any updates that Barry you have or anyone else has heard about?
So in regards to the Resource Conservation Partnership Program, there's no update on that.
Okay.
It's the $25 million approved grant award that the local entities here in Washtenaw County submitted last year. Nobody at the Natural Resources Conservation Service has been authorized to execute the agreement. But if anybody gets that execution authority, then we're, move ahead, but nothing, so there's nothing more on that.
So as far as we know, that money should become, we have not been told that it is not gonna be available.
Yes,
Yes.
correct.
Okay,
And as I said, it has been approved, the grant award itself. And this was funds that was approved by Congress in the last Farm Bill. So it's the kind of thing that should not be held up.
And we've asked for a specific portion of that. Right?
Right, so Scio has, yes, correct, I think it was $6 million of the 25 million that we had sort of earmarked for projects here. Obviously, that would be a great help to us to match our own $6 million. So we'll see where that goes. And then we have two outstanding awards from the Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. The other pot of federal funds that we've tapped for many years, one of them was for the Hicks property. And all indications continue to be that if when we are ready to go to closing and request those funds, that they will be forthcoming. And there's two ways that federal funds can be accessed that have been committed like that. We have traditionally requested, just by submitting a letter for the federal funds to be provided at closing. And so they get wired to the title company, unlike the state funds. Although I'm not sure what the state's doing this time around. I told them everybody else just wires their money to the title company. Why can't you do that too? But anyway, so the federal program has done that. The other way that the federal funds can be accessed is by closing and then requesting the federal funds be reimbursed, which is what we ended up doing on the Runs property, but there were complications with that. But generally speaking, when somebody makes that request for reimbursement, that it does get turned around pretty quickly. I would just say that there's an additional level of risk involved in that, right? But either way, those funds have been committed, and so they ought to be forthcoming for that project. I'm asking for.
yeah,
That's all I got to say
so
for now.
far so good.
Yep.
Okay, any questions on that for Mary? Anybody? Okay. Attendance, what about the June 12th meeting? Does anyone know that they will not be here on June 12th? Daryl, you will not be here. Okay.
And I will not be here.
Okay, we're missing two then. Okay, that means we can't do a closed session unless unless we have a new member, but we'd have to meet to. Well, yeah, okay. Well, all right. Good to know. See, this is good to know. That is fine. This is
Here's
exactly
the-
why we do this.
There is a slim possibility that I may be here, but I'm really hoping not.
Okay, well, let's just assume that neither one of you will be.
Yeah, I'll be
And
at
if we,
work meeting.
you're gonna be at a work meeting, are you gonna be gone for a lengthy amount of time? Because if we needed to call a special meeting, for example, That's what-
My plan is to be, but,
to gone for a long time?
for several weeks, yes,
Oh.
but,
Oh,
but
She's retired.
Yeah.
So retired people do, right?
yeah, that's true.
So,
I did get rear-ended at a light,
Oh, no.
Oh,
Friday?
Daryl.
and so that has thrown a curveball into my plans.
Oh.
So I'm still hoping to stay on target with my plans, in which case that would be several weeks.
Okay. Okay, well, good. That's great. You're good.
How about David?
Well,
How about
I'll
that?
get in touch with them. But the fact is, with two absent and no, and an unfilled seat, we cannot go into closed session.
If there was a need for an emergency session,
Mhm.
you would probably be available. right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So we could maybe call a special meeting if there was something
If-
that
if
came
you-
up
yeah,
that we needed to.
that
move ahead.
needed
So
attention.
cancel that meeting and just get
Well,
together.
let me,
Maybe.
yeah, I think we may have
Postpone it?
to.
Postpone it?
Postpone.
Well, it's our regular meeting, so it's on the calendar already, but we can call a special meeting if we need to. I think, we may decide to do that. Okay, good deal. Thank you so much.
All right.
Liz, I'm sorry, back on the open seat.
Yes,
You did get my email about Dave Borneman?
yes, he
Okay.
is not interested.
Yes, thank you.
Right,
Okay.
yes.
He's interested, just
But not
otherwise not available.
Interested but not available. Yes.
And when
right,
when he retires and is sitting around twiddling his thumbs,
which will probably be a while. Yeah.
he said he'd
He's a pretty busy guy.
return to.
Yeah. Okay. All right, new business. The only thing I have in new business is an update on our property prioritization proposal.
And
What-
I'm gonna actually withdraw that proposal because
Oh,
I don't think there's a strong interest, and also based on the information that David got from our township attorneys, it sounds like it could not be a closed session anyway.
yeah,
So
so.
I would just let
right.
it go.
Okay, yeah, I will just let everyone know that, that what David found out when he went to the township attorneys was that we could not have a
Workshop.
confidential workshop. It would be open to the public, and that, and
Yeah.
the properties that are not yet, there's not yet a working, an application from the property owner, we can't have a public
Yeah.
meeting. So we can still have speakers and we have people like Ryan come in and educate us on various things. So if anyone wants to do that at some point, if there's something that interests you, let me know and I will follow up on that. But we can't have a closed session for that purpose.
Okay, so in terms of a group like this, doing planning work around properties that are confidential, how does a group do that?
We
How
have
do
a
you-
consultant and the consultant is responsible for doing just what Barry did last month, a month ago, which is send out, letters of inquiry and the application and then follow up with property owners. That's his job. That's what we pay him to do. And then he brings that to us.
Then we get applications in the door and
Yeah.
then we could discuss them in closed session.
Right, okay. I thought the whole
Which is-
discussion was around
Yeah.
how do we plan
Plan
ahead,
ahead.
understand the current map?
Yep.
Well,
Look
it's a
at
good idea.
priorities,
It's a
but,
good idea. I still think it's a good idea, but we cannot do it confidentially.
right,
It's
so
not,
I
it's
guess
not
that's
in
what I'm
line with state
asking,
law.
like, how does a group do other groups do planning in the public? And if so, is there a version of that we could do in our open meeting?
Well, what we do is, we work with, Carl, who did that map of property, we work with the township planner.
Yeah,
And things like that, who sort of, Barry, you work with the township planner, Carla Wortman, is that right?
Yeah.
And they sort of identify properties in that way. It's just that we, as a volunteer group, are not involved in that part.
Is there
Okay.
a limitation on the number of people who can be present at a talking session? A limitation on the number of us?
Fewer than a quorum. So if a quorum right now is 3,
No, quorum is 4.
4,
It's four.
okay, well, out of 7, 4. So we would, if
Quorum is 5.
That's closed session.
that,
Closed session.
5 for
It's
closed
a
session and
supermajority
4
for
if
closed
we have, 4, even if we have an open seat.
So just as an example, Larimer County in Colorado, there was the staff. It had its own department and it had an open lands advisory board, more effectively an advisory board. So while at the advisory board level, there were some open sessions that we also worked with the public on to try to identify what in a broad brushstroke style people would like to see protected, and that would be similar to the future land use map that you currently have for Scio Township. When it came down to specifically targeting certain properties, those decisions were all made by staff, and the advisory board was not involved in that. So essentially, Barry's our staff, and he's using his judgment. And we're the kind of the advisory board that then deals with properties that come in with an application.
You know, did I hear you say there was no, you know, so this is not happening because of what Reed found out, plus there was no interest? Did I hear you say that?
Well, I didn't think there was a strong interest based on last month comments. I thought that they're, but maybe my misunderstanding, but
Misunderstood that. I mean, I'm strongly interested in, I can see you.
Yeah,
I think,
I also am interested, I mean, I have, and I was just looking at while we're meeting the criteria, you know, when we are ranking projects and land parcels, that it's interesting to better understand those. But it's not looking at the bigger picture.
And that we can certainly discuss in public session.
Yeah.
in open session.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of options here, I think. One is that if you want to be more specific, property specific, ownership specific, then we can meet in a small group, you know, the three of you and me, and Daryl and Lisa and David. And I can meet, but separately, because we don't have a quorum now. Whenever you have 4 people in the same room, it's considered to be a public meeting. It has to be posted and all those kinds of things. And then you can't, you know, have the free discussion I think that you want to have.
You could host 2 focus groups.
That's correct, if you want to do that. And then the other option is to have a more general discussion, not owner, property, and so forth, specific in a course of a regular public meeting.
You mean like parts of the township that we want to?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can look
I
at the
see.
map of conserved lands
Yeah,
or.
Right.
And say, well, we've got a lot of stuff over here,
Uh-huh.
should this be one of our focus areas? Naming names or.
Right,
particular
yeah,
Property.
yeah.
I have in mind also, future possibilities of being by protect cell.
Yeah.
Finding, you know, suitable agricultural people to buy these properties and, you know, what we did, Lisa, last time, who was on that, in that group? You and me
And Liz,
And me,
Pardon me?
and Liz.
I was in,
Yeah.
you forgot me.
And right, so there were only 3 of us and we met to review the applications and so on, right, and make recommendations. So it sounds like that's possible again.
Yes, exactly. That's the good, that's the format
Good.
for this kind of discussion, if you want to have.
we're reviewing the applications. That can be done in a closed session because you're discussing specific applications, correct?
That was a little different. That was, we were trying to find an appropriate farming operation to take over a property that was a
Oh.
buy protect sell. So we had put out an RFP and then gotten in quite a few applications.
10 or 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And what I find interesting is to review the scoring system for review, which was revised in December 2012.
I mean, that's a good idea, yeah.
But it's pretty, I mean, but it talks about agricultural land, natural areas and open space, park and recreation. It gets down to soil quality, parcel size, road frontage, groundwater, woodlands, other habitats, what? So they're very specific, and I wondered if this was worth taking a look at again. Or at least making sure that it's up to date and what, you know, are we missing anything?
What, based on your years, now that's 13 years ago, Barry, what, do you think we're due for a review and update on that?
So I think the change that happened at that time was adding a parks scoring. Because the agricultural land and natural areas and open space land categories have been in this scoring rubric from the beginning, since 2005. And I think it was around 2012 when there was interest in acquiring land for parks and recreation, and so a third scoring system was devised for that and added onto it, and that was the change that happened in 2012. So the other two, the ag land and the natural areas ones, have remained the same for 20 years. And I think have served us well. You can always
Is there a need-
revisit that.
Oh, sorry, is there a need to be more specific than we are as far as some of these? Or,
I think it's pretty
it's,
specific already,
okay, you think?
almost too specific.
Yeah, all right, all right.
And, you know, I mean, we go through this process for every property that gets nominated and
Oh.
have since day one. You know, there are certain factors in all of these scoring systems for that matter, that are unknowns, in particular, whether we have any matching funds coming from other sources. When we have an application that just comes in the door, we have no idea. So on my scoring rubric, I put question mark. And the same thing for landowner contributions. Sometimes people say on the application, I'm willing to discount by 10%. Some people say no to that. Some people put a question mark, you know, to be discussed at some future time. Oftentimes people want to know what the appraised value is first. If it's $1.75, they're probably not going to discount it. But if it's $1,750,000, maybe they would. So those are both question marks. So the scores that are completed after Carlisle Wortman does their analysis, I do my analysis, and you all do your property visits and score. It's still preliminary in the sense that we don't know a couple of major scoring factors. One of them is 14 points. I'm just looking at, this is the ag land one. One's 14 and one's 15. So it's, you know, 29 additional points that could be scored. And that pretty much everything else is fixed. Yeah, and even with that, it's not a hard and fast rule that the highest scoring property is the one that we pursue. There could be other factors involved, like they're not willing to sell right now, or anything else right now. But I mean, you know, you look at all of the properties that we've got in the mix and say, you know, these are the priorities based on how they're ranked, scored. But there may be, you know, maybe an elderly person that owns the property, and you know, we want to intervene now, even though it scores number 5 on the list.
There may be a property that, to which there are changes after the application.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So there's, you know, I mean, I think of it as a guideline for things. I mean, if the property scores poorly, chances are you're not going to go after it. But if it scores decently, you think, you know.
Yeah, okay, so Lisa, what do you think about that?
I think it's helpful just to even hear Barry now, and I wonder even for the general public during open session sometime, if it might be helpful to take 10-15 minutes to describe
Sure.
what we mean by these different qualities. This is what we're looking for, just a 10-15 minute
Sure,
educational.
we do that.
Well, and related to that, I was wondering if when we have a new person come on board, I know you do an orientation
Yeah.
for them, but maybe there's a way in which we could do a round of conversation where we're reviewing a few things around like the criteria, we're checking in on the array of properties we've been able to preserve. Like thinking about, like, there's sort of a trend thing here too, I'm wondering about, like, okay, so if we had a lot of activity during some period and we've had less activity during another, you know, like, what are some of the dynamics? What's your sense of that? What can we expect, you know, over the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, just some of that kind of reflecting on what we've done, and then like, what are the conditions? And I know now, as we've been talking, things are really up in the air and unclear, but
With some things.
you know, but I think for me, and if I were a new person, I would find that kind of an orientation helpful and it may not
I
hurt.
think it could help all of us. And maybe, do you all want to have something like that, like a discussion like that on our agenda? Maybe at some point after our new person comes on?
Yeah,
Yeah, and I kind of like to actually, we have several different versions of scoring, is that right? Barry, like one's for
Agriculture and-
Oh, yes, there's different categories.
Oh, okay, I'd actually like to get, I know somewhere in there, I have this stuff, but actually have the different sets and then go over them. And the elements, because I know the first time I came in, you know, it's like my second time here or something. And we were scoring something and I was looking at one thing and you were using another one and I just got totally confused. Cause I'm a
Yeah.
visual person. I like to actually see, you know, the elements myself and read them myself. So,
and there's one for ag, right? And then one for natural areas and open space, and then one for parks and recreation,
Yeah,
so.
we really haven't used the Parks and Rec one for a long time. It was added to the system, but.
Okay,
So are those documents that we could put out as part of our packet and then
Sure.
have a discussion? And maybe, do you want to wait a month or so? Or we're,
yeah, wait till the new
let's
person.
wait. I think it would be helpful to include a new person in that. And then at that point, Barry, I'll get those from you
Yep.
and include those in there.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
One of the thoughts I just had was, I was trying to find the ordinance real quick, but I think that all the categories that are, I should say all of the, what do I call it here? The different factors, you know, the criteria, in each of those two primary scoring systems were all things that were identified in the ordinance when the board passed it 20 years ago, the board of trustees.
Oh, okay.
They didn't assign values to them or anything of that nature. It was, you know, this is going back a long time now, but discussion about, so what are the factors that you'd want to consider in evaluating a property? And we had the discussion here, but we looked at other ordinances and stuff from other places and came up, you know, with those individual criteria that made it into the ordinance that the board adopted, but then it was your predecessor's job and me to flesh that out and create the document that you have to say, okay, well, you know, parcel size in the ag scoring district is gonna be, you know, 2, 3, and 5 points based on, you know, 40 to 80 acres, you know, and so forth. So your predecessors came up with, you know, the number of acres and the points that gets associated with that. And I remember we spent a lot of time on this. At least one whole meeting, maybe a couple of meetings. 20 years ago, and said, here are all the factors, you know, and here are all the different, you know, things that assign to it, you know, how much road frontage by, you know, feet and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then did some exercise. I can't remember if we had
none of us were here.
no, but we may have had a facilitator, boys, you know, again, jogging my memory from 20 years ago. But, you know, somehow we came up, you know, to say, you know, what are the most important factors? What should get the most points out of the system? So, you know, it was intentional that the soil quality got 13 and the parcel size got 5, for example.
But you still feel like this works and makes sense?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's the most important thing.
There's value, I think, also in consistency. It's the same system for
Yeah.
20 years. And so, I mean, you could, you know, adjust things if you had something different over time, but it's nice to be able to say, we came up with something that works pretty well, and we're just gonna go with it, so we can compare the property that was nominated 10 years ago to a property that's nominated today in the same system.
And there's
Well,
addendum information too, right? Like
Yes.
a landmark tree is defined as blankety blank. And I know I probably had that at one time, but it would be nice to
I
have
think it
that.
would be nice for all of us. I would like to, I'm sure I have it somewhere, if you said.
Yeah, there's, I looked it up online, it's actually a technical definition that's used by, maybe it was Ann Arbor, but
The state.
I don't know where I got it, but
It's in township ordinance.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to have all that housed. I mean, I don't know the status of the Scio server and IT, but even for us to have it on our own Google Drive would be helpful.
And to discuss openly.
I also want to note that times change. Times change, cultures change. What was important 20 years ago may have changed a bit. And anyway, we should, that gives us reason to review this process from time to time
Sure.
to make sure that it, touches on the points of value to the community.
Mhm.
And does it tie together with the sustainability group? Because we're not just looking at trees because they're landmark or beautiful, but they're helping to sustain.
We have a tree, I think we have a tree canopy goal, don't we, in our,
ESTF does.
yeah,
I think so.
yeah.
So it could be tied, into that.
Yeah,
Okay,
good point.
great, thank you. I have that on the calendar for a future meeting when we have our open seat filled, and I will remember that. Let's move on to Barry's open session consultants report.
So I mentioned earlier, there's no update with the federal ASAP program, Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. I made a note that the gentleman who ran that grant program here in Michigan, I'd say for at least 15 years, maybe longer than that, took an early retirement opportunity. Somebody else at the agency in East Lansing has been identified as the his successor, I guess I would say. There's a hiring freeze such that his position cannot be posted. But his responsibilities have shifted to somebody else. And hopefully things will continue to go smoothly there, but it's substantial loss. Brian Thomas was the guy's name, and he was a great advocate and a great supporter in many ways. Worked through a bunch of difficult issues to make the program go more smoothly. And in a number of cases, was able to attract more funds to Michigan beyond the initial allocation that was received. So we could do more projects over the years. So we'll carry on, but it's a substantial loss.
And besides which, as you pointed out on Facebook, was it? I don't know. We've got a senator who is very pro open land and
And
new
I'll
farms.
come to that in a moment, the meeting that you and I attended a couple of days ago. So I mentioned the RCPP. So Senator Sue Shink, who's our state senator for a lot of Washtenaw County, not all of it, and then some of Jackson as well. Had she called it a farmer and agriculture listening session, it was, at the Ann Arbor Township Hall on a Tuesday afternoon. Tim and I attended, and there was a full room. I'd say 50 people.
Yeah. I think so. I didn't count. but
How many farmers?
Quite a few.
Sweet.
Standing room.
Yeah.
That's good.
And Sue made a few introductory comments and opened up the floor. And the first question that came up was from a gentleman who I think is either in Freedom or Lima Township, who conveyed a conservation easement on his property some years ago. There was a state farmland development rights agreement through originally the Public Act 116. That was passed 50 years ago. And the state provided to him a consent agreement allowing the easement to go forward, and still being able to claim the tax credits from the FTRA farmland agreement. And then was notified recently that he's not going to get those tax credits anymore, because he had conveyed the easement. They figured this out somehow. And so he's being denied those tax credits. And so this is a full-time farmer. I don't know if he's a dairy farmer or crop farmer. I don't know him personally.
Those are Michigan tax credits.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that was the first question that came up,
And you said you've heard this from other people before, other
Yes.
farmers before have had this same problem.
and heard it again today.
Yeah, last month,
coincidentally.
yeah.
You mentioned it last month.
Yeah, this is an ongoing major issue.
So what did Sue?
She was aware of some of those things. She'd been in contact with the director of the Department of Agriculture, who is now apprised of the situation, whereas he was not, until I and several other people went to the State Commission on Agriculture and Rural Development meeting in March and made statements at public comment and was able to bring it to his attention. And his staff had been working on what they consider to be a new process, a solution to the issue. They've not revealed that, nor have they stated what the conflict is or what it's based on. Something in statute, but they've not provided any of that information to us. So it's a bit of a mystery in that regard. But I dove into the statute a couple of weeks ago to try to figure it out for myself. And the statute addresses a couple of ways that conservation easements can be conveyed either to the state of Michigan as the grantee, or in the case of like the Hicks property, where the state is providing a grant. Scio Township is they call it the local grantee. That's identified in the opening paragraph of the easement. And we identify the grantor and the grantee. And the state of Michigan is listed as a state grantee. So the statute addresses those two circumstances, but does not explicitly contemplate the conveyance of a conservation easement to other entities, like a township or a land conservancy or counties or any other entities that would be eligible to be the grantee of a conservation easement. And so that seems to be the sticking point, but again, it's just my interpretation of the statute. Senator Schenck indicated that the department staff, has come up with this new process, which we anticipate to be that for every one of these easements where there was a farmland development rights agreement involved and a consent agreement that was provided by the department, their form, they signed it, had it notarized, and it was recorded with the easement at closing and has been effective for a number of years. They're now saying that those are no longer valid, and so they're not going to be paying the tax credits on that basis unless their new process is that all of these easements, and it's something on the order of 150, although I think it may be substantially, well, more than that, because I came across one today here in Scio Township. That these easements would be amended to allow for the state to be listed as a co-grantee and then re-recorded. That's going to be their proposal.
How many of those do we have in Scio Township?
I don't know. I dove into Ann Arbor Township one day just to see how many would apply there, and I came up with 9. There's probably a smaller number here, but there's at least one.
But we don't have a firm rule yet. So
No.
we're waiting for that. We're assuming it's gonna be what you say, that the state has to be added to all these, and they have to be re-recorded.
Except that it is at best problematic and
Agreed.
really unworkable.
Yeah.
So I was meeting with Naomi Traeger today, doing a monitoring visit. She bought the property on North Delhi Road, north of Kern River Drive. If you ever go up that way, there's the big, beautiful Meadowcroft barn. The easement was conveyed by the Moores some years ago, and then Naomi bought the property several years ago. And I had forgotten that the Moores had one of these farmland development rights agreements on the property, and it runs for some number of years. And runs with the property, even if the property changes hands, sort of like an easement does, except that the farmland agreements have a term on them. It's no more than a total of 90 years involved. So I don't know the term of their agreement, but it was long enough that when Naomi took ownership of the property several years ago, the agreement continued. She mentioned this morning that she had if they notify the state if there's a change in ownership. And she did that, and they approved that agreement going forward with her name on it. Apparently, this is a couple of years ago, not knowing that there was a conservation easement on the property. Well, somehow they figured that out, and she got a letter recently that she has sent to me. An adjustment on her tax return, her tax refund. So she was owed over $4,000 for enrollment in this program. And the corrected amount is $0. And so they are proposing to send her a check for the amount of the refund that's not associated with being enrolled in the farmland agreement, which is $373.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna make one comment.
Yes,
You have named a specific individual,
yeah,
specific property. It's very personal, private information, financial information that's currently being shared.
yes.
So,
We have a conservation easement on the property.
no, you're talking
I
about
understand.
tax data
And she had asked her, can this information be
shared with us?
correct?
Okay, thank you, because I'm going, oh my,
Yeah, no, I fully understand. Yeah, I wouldn't do that if that
thank
was
you,
not the
okay.
case. But this is giving an example of what these people are facing in terms of their this change in policy or whatever they want to call it at the state. And other cases I've come across, including folks in Ann Arbor Township and Lima Township, it's $10,000 a year that they're out. So that this letter says you can request a no-fee informal conference within 60 days of receipt of the letter, which was sometime in April, and we've been, and when I say we, this is all the local conservation organizations that have become aware of these things, have told people file the request for that. We don't know what that entails or when they'll get around to you, but you got 60 days. Make sure you file it then. And send them this consent agreement that was signed and notarized and recorded and says that it is binding on the department and its successors. And ask them how they're justifying not paying them on that basis.
So they're objecting to the property owner getting paid twice, once with the tax credits, once with the conservation easement.
So the statute says, in those two circumstances where the state's the grantee or the state is providing funds and they are listed as a co-grantee, that the agreements get terminated. But that the owner then has access to the tax credits as if they were still enrolled in the program. But that again is the only two scenarios that the statute addresses, not these other circumstances. And so this is another example of a case where the state did not provide money. They were not the grantee of the easement. They provided the consent agreement. And now they're reneging on that. They're saying this is no longer valid, and so we're not gonna pay you this amount. And at least one case I've heard about here in Washtenaw County, they got a similar kind of letter, but told them they owed tax with interest from 2022. Yeah, so.
At any rate, Senator Shake.
She was aware of all of this. At least,
Willingness to dig into it a bit.
yeah, she was aware that the director had directed staff to come up with a solution. And I think those of the understanding or hope that it would be satisfied by that. And I and other local conservation partners have put together a memo, a talking points memo, indicating why that's not a viable solution. I noted, on my monitoring visits, I take a copy of the easement and the baseline document with me, and so I pulled out that when I was meeting with Naomi today. And there are 4 things in the amendment paragraph that are permissible reasons to amend the easement. One of them was a change in agricultural practices. One of them was giving up a right that you have on the property, like a building site, residential building site that you don't want to use anymore. You can amend the easement to make that go away. There were, the other ones off the top of my head, but there were 4 very explicit things that were listed. And none of this qualifies for that. So, if you have an easement that has the reason for amendments, and it ain't one of those, that is a problem. It's also a problem if somebody made a deduction, did a discount and claimed a deduction on their federal income taxes. We got a benefit from that. The IRS is gonna wanna know.
So Barry, do you see this as an impediment that doesn't get fixed going forward?
Very possibly. Very possibly. The worst case scenario is somebody says, well, if I gotta, if I'm not gonna enroll in PA 116 and you're gonna give me $200,000 for the easement, that's great. But if I'm getting $10,000 a year in 20 years, that will have got the same amount, and that, contract, the agreement goes on, so in the end, they get more money from that than they would from the easement.
Right.
And we've always argued and been of the understanding from, previous interpretations by the department as evidence in these consent agreements that these programs coincide. And in fact, for years, I've told people you should also enroll in this program after you do your easement. So it's fraught with problems. So we had a good conversation with Senator Shake. I followed up with an email yesterday and said, here's a copy of the consent agreement that was provided for the Cooks in Ann Arbor Township. As you can see, that is signed and notarized and was recorded. And I'm not seeing how the department can say when that they're not going to respect them when it says it's binding on the department and its successors.
It seems like what they need to do is amend the statute.
Correct.
And in tax, there's this concept of substance versus form, where you look at the original congressional intent of a tax law versus the technical language.
Yeah.
In this case, it seems like the original intent was to facilitate conservation easements, but then they have the specific language kind of thinking, well, this is when we're involved. But if truly their intent was to support and encourage conservation easements, which should be in the language, if they've preserved the language of the discussion that went around creating this law in the first place,
Yeah.
then they would need to modify the statute so that the form agrees with the substance.
Correct. Yeah. And that's what I've proposed at this point. So I went through and said, so what's the discrepancy here? Maybe it's just the lack of several other definitions that are referenced in other parts of either that statute or a different one. And so my suggestion is, and maybe it's too simplistic, but maybe it's not, is to just plug in a couple of other definitions into those parts of the statute. So it's clear.
Provides for that, yeah. So that the intent is correctly conveyed in the
Yes.
language. Yes.
Yes, so that I've actually drafted that language.
Oh, that's good. So that's helpful.
Yeah.
Is there a formal process to complain about this? Because it would be nice to have it be.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what they're.
Is that what it is?
Yes,
Okay,
very,
great.
and
I want to make sure that we can, I don't want to cut you off.
No.
And I do want to hear the conference rehab
And that could go
recap.
quickly
but-
also, but we had some items discussed in closed session also.
Right,
Yeah, and I
I
need
know.
to leave by
So Janine
6,
has to
so,
leave,
yeah,
and
okay.
so we need.
Sorry, I just
we need
wanted to do a
move
time
on.
check, because
So that's a quick
Okay.
update
But
on
thank you for
that.
the review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as indicated, spring monitoring is underway at this point. And so just a brief comment about the American Farmland Trust Conference that I attended and spoke at on a panel I thought it was terrific. Although, the disappointing thing was that the major sponsor of the conference, which is the first national farmland preservation conference that AFT has run in, I think, 10 years. The primary sponsor was the Natural Resources Conservation Service of the United States, NRCS. And not a single NRCS person was there. They were not allowed to attend.
Not allowed to.
And obviously they've been a major partner on all kinds of conservation programs for a long time, but so that was disappointing. But folks from all over the country, great time. My presentation went very well. Great
Good.
Contacts.
Good job representing us and others in this part of the state.
And then in terms of the two projects for which we have executed purchase agreements, I'll give you an update on those. So the first one is the Hicks property at the southwest corner of Zeeb and Joy. That was out to the site yesterday with the folks doing the environmental assessment. And that should be done now in the next week or two. The city and county agreed to review those documents, all of the documents, the package that typically includes the environmental assessment, but before that comes in, I posted to them when it's arrived, but that's the 60-day clock for them to review the package is ticking as we speak. I don't think we're going to make the June 30th deadline, so we'll probably have to go to an extension on that because once we get the local approvals for things, then it has to go off for federal review, and that, Brian Thomas made that go much more quickly in recent years, but it's still going to be 30 days probably, and maybe longer. So we're still on track to close that, soon, certainly this year, but probably need an extension to that closing deadline. And then the Hayden property is in a similar situation. I also met with the ESA techs yesterday morning on that, and so that report will be done in a couple of weeks' time. And as soon as we get that, then we can move toward closing on that. The survey's done, baseline's done. Peter's got those. Okay. So that one can close. I think we also have a June 30th deadline on that one. And that one we can, since we don't have any other reviews to go through, since we're the loan funding source on that.
Can we move on to your consultant summary? Because
Yes, we can.
I know we have some things to do in closed session and we have that in public comments.
Yes. So in terms of the matters that we're going to discuss in closed session, notably, the two appraisals that the Board of Trustees approved came in today. So we'll have a conversation about that and whether to pursue those properties. And then a couple of other just brief updates on a couple other projects that are in process. Great.
Do you anticipate a vote?
Yes, I do.
Possible vote?
I think that's entirely possible
Okay.
for these two
So we
properties.
will,
that have the
and
appraisals.
we will return to open session anyway to approve the closed session minutes, but, okay, very good. Is that all
Yes.
of the closed session? Public comments. Are you good back there? Okay. All right, Chris, do we have anyone who would like to speak?
No hands are raised.
Okay,
So-
let's go on to closed session.
Yeah.
I propose that we go into discussion of pending property, closed session for discussion of pending property evaluations pursuant to section 15.268D of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, specifically to consider the purchase or lease of real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease that real property is obtained.
Okay, do we have support?
Support.
Support is Tim. All in favor?
Hi.
No, you have to do a voice.
Yeah, we
Me.
do.
Great.
You just go around.
Yeah, Pappas,
Yeah.
Are you voting yes,
Yes.
go to closed session? Yeah.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Redmond.
Yes.
Wiseman.
Yes,
LaPrade, yes.
okay, we are now in first of all, I would like to ask you all to approve the minutes of our closed session.
So moved.
Okay, that was Daryl. Okay, Lisa, and support for Tim, by Tim. All in favor of approving our closed session minutes?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, they are approved. Okay, do we have any?
Then I would like to make a motion to recommend that the Scio Township Board of Trustees approve the expenditures of funds out of Fund 233, the Open Space Land Preservation Fund for the purchase of fee simple on property application number 2022-1 for 1.029 million.
And I will support that motion. All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
Aye.
and opposed? Okay, that motion is passed as well.
Yes.
Okay, I think we're
I
ready
move
to
to
adjourn.
I second the motion.
Okay, Gerald, second. Look at that. That is pretty good. All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Okay, thank you. We are adjourned.
Good.